All right, Jennifer Price, back for round two. I had some really lovely feedback about our last conversation, and I was left personally feeling like I wanted to ask you more, but we just ran out of time. So thanks for joining me again to continue our conversation.
Well, thank you for asking me all these questions, and I'm glad you got good feedback. Amazing.
So, what I was hoping to ask you today, I have a few ideas that are lingering in my mind, just things that I've heard from clients, things that I've read and heard from other practitioners, and I'd love to see what your thoughts and opinions are on these things. So, the first one, which was brought up to me by actually a client the other day, and she was saying to me, her belief is that if a practitioner, a manual therapy practitioner, is really good at what they do in terms of their skills using their manual therapy, then they shouldn't have to do any exercises or anything to integrate the treatment because on its own, what they did with their hands should be enough. And I felt myself becoming a little bit defensive personally when I heard that, because a big bulk of my practice is around giving people tools that they can do on their own to integrate their treatments with movement. But I also think there maybe is a bit of truth to that, so I can see both sides of it. And I was curious, what is your point of view on that statement in your experience?
It's a bold statement and it's provocative. I think it's a spectrum, isn't it? So if somebody has had one mechanical thing that was caused by a trauma, say they sprained their ankle, and as a therapist you can help them with your treatments, they may not need to have any exercise done to them if it was a one-off, but if it's repetitive, then they're going to need some strengthening exercises, aren't they? Otherwise it'll keep happening. So I think it's there's never one size fits all, and there's never one rule for everything. So I think we can pretty much say that's a question that's provocative and good to ask. But on the other hand, I think people should be involved in their well-being and know about their bodies, because if you're not, you'll always be practitioner shopping and you'll be following this endless thread, because something will always be changing in your body. It's the nature of physics that change happens, so your body will keep changing. And if you think that this one practitioner can fix all those changes, then it's not true. It can't happen. We need many practitioners, we need many inputs. Life is complex now, and especially with the way we work and sit at computers and things like that. So I think physical exercise and small adaptations are more necessary now than ever. Otherwise you'll be stuck visiting your practitioner all the time to get these things, restrictions fixed, or illnesses, or maladaptations in your body. You'll always have them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. And what you said about practitioner shopping, I think I've fallen into the trap of that before, where I was having a chronic problem with my foot a few years back, and nothing I was doing movement-wise was helping. And I believed so wholeheartedly that I can figure this out myself. And I couldn't. And then I was reminded that I have this amazing friend who's an osteopath in Toronto, Amanda Moore. And she does a lot of the Burrell, visceral, and upledger craniosacral, and has a whole scope of techniques that I had never experienced from her before. That was my first time getting visceral work. And in one session, she provided me so much relief that I couldn't have done with exercise, that I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I don't need to do any exercise right now, because I just literally needed my duodenum to be freed up and let some blood flow back into my foot. But then, it opened up the opportunity for the movements I was doing to have a greater effect, because I was bumping into a brick wall. And I think maybe that's where I'm at with this, is that, is that if you're bumping into a brick wall with movement and nothing is happening, then you probably need a little help with manual therapy. But to expect that is the thing that you can 100% rely on as your source of well-being without having to participate, then I think that's a little delusional.
Yeah, I agree. I remember I had a patient years and years ago say that similar thing to me. But it was in the context that they thought they could fix everything that went wrong in their body themselves because we should be able to, right? But it's none of us are superhuman, and we're all very human, and we all need different inputs at different times, and it's not an exact thing. And if we could run a code that fixed everything in our body, great, like a computer, but we can't. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's a little bit of inside help and a little bit of outside help and a little bit of good luck.
Yeah, and at different times in life,
Yeah.
and to know which time we're in, where do we need to have a little bit more hands-on help, or is now the time for us to step in and take a bit more ownership?
Yeah, and any good practitioner will help you a lot in the first parts when you come in. It'll often feel quite like a huge change that's happened in your body, like what happened with you when you first saw who was it, Amanda Moore, and the physical restrictions lift, and suddenly you're blown away by how different you feel in your body. But that will peter down, that feeling of, you'll feel good, but you'll get used to the good, and then it's up to maintaining it and not letting any other restrictions or habits happen again. So
Yeah, the maintenance part, I think, is really key there.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. I have another question that's more of a general concept that may not be an easy question to answer, but I think it's important to reflect on a bit, and I'm really curious about your thoughts. I was asked this by a mentor of mine a few years back, and I was pondering it over for weeks and weeks, and I don't really have a clear answer yet. But the question is, drumroll, what is health? What does it mean to be healthy? What do you think, Jen?
That is a big sphere, isn't it? Like, everything comes into it, of course, like mental, emotional, physical, energetic. So I guess it's everything working, all the components of your body working in unison at their optimal level. And the fact that you can adapt to your environment, the foods you eat, you can digest them. The air you breathe, it's good. It's not harming you. It's kind of how we sit in our environment, and then I guess we know what chronic ill health is, and that's devastating. A lot of people would give anything to have even a smidgen of one day out of a year of what's called good health, which means being able to move around, being able to think clearly, being able to, breathe properly. So it again is a spectrum for everyone of where they're at. But I think for a lot of people, we don't see that anymore, that complete good health, because we've got a mental health crisis which affects our bodies as well, not to mention our mental state, and affects how we live in the world. So I think good health, and what is health, is living our optimum life in our environment.
I'm looking at the definition of health. I just typed it into Google, and the definition says the state of being free from illness or injury. But I think there's a bit more to it than just being free of illness. What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Are you deflecting the question? Well, as I was reflecting on that question for, I don't know, it felt like weeks, and probably still am reflecting on it, is that it came down to my ability to make decisions for myself that were authentic and were, I know that's a fluffy term, authentic, but I reflected on how most of the times where I've been ill or not feeling well in some way, mentally or emotionally or physically, I can track it back to making a decision, either consciously or just unconsciously going with life and the path of least resistance. And it was a decision that was not in my best interest for who that I think that I am in the world. So I think for me, ill health would be being in a state of not being able to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I guess that comes back to a word that you said, which is being able to adapt. So being able to make a decision to go a direction or another direction to choose. And if you're in a state of ill health, you can't really make a choice. You're just stuck in a state and there's no spectrum to explore. You're just in one point on a spectrum. And maybe that decision is a conscious one that you can make. But I think in the body, in terms of like homeostasis, it's the body is constantly making choices, quote unquote, about go this direction or that direction, and how do I get back to a state of adaptability? And that would be, I think, like more of a central point on a spectrum. So being somewhere in the middle of the extremes would be the state of health. But we're always fluctuating from one end of the spectrum to the other, trying to find that stability in the middle. And it's not a static stability, it's a being able to adapt from either end of the spectrum. So like you said, you eat a food, like if you're sensitive to things like gluten and your body can't adapt to that input into the body and it becomes inflamed and it gets stuck there and it can't deal with it and go in the other direction of, what's the opposite of inflammation? De-inflammation? Not a medical professional, so I don't have the lingo. But does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said about it being a spectrum and being stuck is, ill health feels like stuckness a lot, doesn't it? Yeah. And you look for any little tool to leverage you out of that point of stuckness. And that's where, who knows what can help, whether it's changing your diet or a different practitioner or a different input or having a really good blood analysis or gut analysis or, yeah.
For you, do you have a personal definition of health?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, for me, it's I feel lucky that my body has always worked how I've wanted it to, within a certain degree. I can, as a young person, I could use it how I wanted to. I could run, I could jump, I could swim, I could, do all sorts of things and have a functioning body and brain most of the time, I think. Anyway, but as you get older, you start to see limits on that, and things start to slow down, and your metabolism fails. So for me, it's just trying to claw back to the point of where everything kind of works well again. So my definition of health for me personally at the moment is having energy, no brain fog, getting rid of post-viral, lingering pathogens, and being able to show up and not have to rest too much, which rest is good, but sometimes I'm a bit annoyed at how much I have to rest to do the jobs I want to do. Yeah.
Speaking of helping people with their health, and a topic that's really prominent right now is artificial intelligence. Everyone's talking about it. I'm trying to ignore it. Haven't fully embraced it. But I'm really curious about, people talk about how AI may take away a lot of jobs in the future, and it'll make some things really easy for us, and it might disrupt a lot in the meantime while we're adapting to the new role that AI plays in our world. And I'm really curious about the role that it will play in our world of manual therapy, body work, natural healing. Do you think that artificial intelligence has a role in the future of body work and things like acupuncture and modalities that work with the body's innate healing mechanisms? Will it help us, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I guess what would you use AI for? I mean, in diagnostics, it's already being used so easily and well. It's also, we've just trialled it here in the clinic for our answering machine out of hours, and it can change appointments for people but it's getting a lot of things wrong, and the big telcos are not helping by making it not very seamless. So there's always going to be teething problems with that, but that's the admin side. I think you asked about bodywork, and I think you will still have a patient come who has used AI to work out their symptoms and a name for it in Western medicine, but it doesn't necessarily enable. AI won't be able to give a treatment. And I think we've got the hands, and our human brain will always be stronger than AI. I can't see the diagnostics that we do with our hands and the treatments that we do with our hands being able to I just think the human brain, and as I think Jean-Pierre Barral says, and I'm paraphrasing him, the subtlety of the brain is just such that it will never be surpassed in the sense of hands-on physical work. So your therapist's hands and their brain have way more ability to really help people than I think I can ever see AI having the ability to do, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you, but to play devil's advocate, I mean, I don't think there's much that a machine can do in terms of an unconscious system meeting another unconscious system, meaning the body. I think it's the unconscious mind is what Upledger says. John, what's his name? John Upledger, the founder of Upledger Craniosacral Therapy. He always says refers to the body as the unconscious mind. And when we're doing a treatment in any way, not just craniosacral, in any modality, that it's an unconscious meeting an unconscious, and there's some kind of interaction there that's really unique. And so could a machine accomplish that same sort of meeting between two bodies? And I imagine potentially a future where you step into a machine that does a scan of you, and it kind of works like a listening or an arcing. And these are two assessments that are a little bit more energetic in nature, meaning you're not using your intellect to do these assessments. You're putting hands on and listening or feeling into another person's system. And it's very intuitive, but real.
Yeah.
Like it's a real feeling that you can get. And I wonder if they could create an artificial intelligence that could listen and arc in a way that is so much more developed than a human ever could. What do you think?
It's possible, isn't it? I mean, because it's going to be going from a human learning, but I'll give for an example. There's a technique we do in visceral manipulation called a triplanar technique, and we have our hands over the largest part of the liver, so on the right side under the ribs. And because I'm Chinese med trained, I always think about the emotions of the liver, and they swing between the two extremes of depression and extreme anger. So when you're expressing things, your liver's often healthy and can express anger if it's thwarted, if you feel thwarted. So sometimes I'm feeling a person's liver and I'm like, what do you want to say, liver? What is it that, are you just mechanically congested? And you can tell if it's psycho-emotional, but I always think the whole liver wants to have a good chat, and everyone's liver is different. So even if you could teach a machine to palpate and listen to the liver, I don't think it would have that energetic exchange between that person's body and mind and the therapist's body and mind. I just don't think you can teach that. There's way too many variables. Every single person I've listened to, their body is different in so many ways. A single organ, I've never come across two organs that are the same. So that I don't see that ever happening.
And thinking about human robotics too, like to create a robot like on Star Trek, Data, or an android that could perform a manual therapy technique as well as a human. There's for sure a long way to go before the robots we have now can do anything like that. But it makes me think about the role that our hormones like oxytocin play in a treatment. Like what you said to me in our first conversation was creating a experience of safety for the person is really the foundation.
Yeah.
And when two people touch and it's a safe experience, oxytocin is released.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to explain the mechanisms of that. I'm probably way oversimplifying it. But oxytocin is a hormone that is present that makes us feel connected.
Yeah.
And that human connection is, I think, half of the treatment in itself. So could a robot, could it be hooked up with some oxytocin glands or something, like could that be a thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was reading something about AI recently and about these people that have AI friends and they are just on their screen, but they get oxytocin from having these really wonderful friends who know them so well and respond to them and care for them.
Really?
And I think there was an article recently in The Guardian about a couple of different people as an example who would take their AI friend to their family get-togethers and their family knew about their AI friend. Yeah. And we may laugh, but those people's mental health was better because of that. I guess the oxytocin, and being listened to and cared for helped them. It was just another kind of thing. So I was to finish off that triplanar exercise in visceral kind of example. I think, you could create an AI that somehow talk to people's organs, maybe it sensed that they're a bit stagnated if they did the full body scan and they could see their spleen was inflamed or they had liver metabolic problems, and they could start talking to that person, and there could be a set of parameters where you could use voice. I don't know if you could use touch, even with advanced robotics. Just don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to get this totally wrong and butcher it, but there was some experiment that maybe you've heard of that had these two monkeys, and one was like a mechanical version of a monkey that had fur on it.
Yeah.
And another was just I'm going to get this totally wrong, but I think it was just a monkey that was just metal. There was no fur on it.
Yeah.
And they had baby monkeys interacting with these
I was going to
mechanical
say,
versions.
Baby monkey. That's that common. Well, not common. It's that experiment that everyone refers to about the need for that tactile sense of softness, and even though I think the metal one still fed the baby, but the babies preferred the one that was soft that didn't feed them. Was that right? Something like that.
Something like that. Something about the softness felt like more of a comforting presence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could imagine a future where there would be robots that could be made to feel exactly like humans, and maybe they have the same intelligence and ability to connect with the unconscious body of a human. But I think we're probably a long way off from that, and I think our jobs are relatively secure for now, Jen.
Maybe in our lifetimes, but maybe not. Who knows? Science's technology is exponentially expanding and growing, so who knows? Like, it's a good question. I hadn't put my mind to it because I'm like you. I've tried to ignore it.
Given the choice, if you had to choose between a human practitioner and a futuristic, amazing AI practitioner, and the AI practitioner was technically like perfect proficiently because they had been programmed to be a perfect and all-knowing practitioner. If you could choose the AI one, the robot, or the human, who would you choose?
Well, of course, the human one.
Why? AI is perfect. It can obviously know more than the human ever could. Why would you choose the inferior human model?
It's a good question, and the question of trust comes into it. And we trust our practitioners, but then there's plenty that have been struck off because they weren't trustworthy. So again, what's your discernment level? Could that AI robot be taken over and turned into a killing machine while it's got your liver in its hands? I don't know. you know, it's not likely with a human therapist for that to happen. But I would be weighing up those trust issues, and if I knew the human therapist really well, I'd be definitely seeing the human.
Oh, I have a horrible mental image now of a robot mangling my liver.
Yeah.
I'm the same as you. I would choose the human every time, even if the human is fallible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you one more thing today, Jen, which is to elaborate on a little bit more of the visceral work that you do. For me, it's been a huge game changer. I already mentioned that it helped me significantly with some foot problems I had. This was before I had studied visceral manipulation before, and my first experience of it was having a lot of neuritis in my right foot, and learning that it was linked to some viscera and some congestion in the right side of my abdomen. It was a game changer for me. It allowed some of the movements I was trying to do to actually be possible. Like it was a brick wall in my viscera that I just couldn't move through. And so all of my efforts to mobilize my spine and mobilize my hips, I just couldn't do it because there was just a chunk of organ, tissue, ligaments, connective shit in the way of me doing that. And I had no idea. And I wonder if you could maybe share a little bit about a case where someone came in with some physical pain that they didn't really consider could be linked to anything visceral, and how that looked and what did you find, and just to share some light about what it can do for people who have never experienced it before.
Yeah, I looked at like pretty much any chronic unresolving mechanical issue that I've seen has a visceral component if the person hasn't had visceral therapy manipulation before. And I mean, I work with Josh Neeft, who's a brilliant visceral manipulation, and so I don't see many of those people because they've already seen him and those things are cleared. But one thing I did observe with his patients was this thing called the left triangular ligament it joins the top of the left side of the liver to the diaphragm, and you've got this kind of crown of ligaments. And the body's so smart, and I just love this, science nerd. Like when we have an impact trauma, our body sucks our organs up under our rib cage to pull them out of harm's way.
And can you explain what you mean by impact trauma? Just an example of what that could be?
Okay, so it could be you play AFL footy and somebody goes up for a mark. Do you know what that is?
As a non-Australian, I still don't know much about footy, so please explain.
So it involves pretty much someone climbing on your back and flying through the air and kneeing you in the back to grab a ball above your head and their head. And then you both land on the ground, and often it's, you get winded or you get knees in your back. Or it could be a whiplash trauma in a car where your seatbelt's gone across your clavicle and the impact is so powerful that your body does this. It's an automatic thing of sort of pulling the liver and the spleen and the organs that could rupture further up under the ribs. And it happens in animals too. I heard about it through a veterinary case where a friend's cat was damaged, broke his pelvis, couldn't walk, paralysed, crawled home, and they took him to the vet. The vet said, he wasn't hit by a car because his organs haven't been sucked up under his ribs. So it happens in animals too. It must be just something. And it happened, there's many cases with AFL footballers, this particular thing happening. So the liver tends to move across towards that left triangular ligament, and you'll see these concurrent sort of twists in their rib cages and lack of movement when you test the side-to-side movement of the ribs, and you then get a general listening to the left sort of central part, and then you get a local listening to the left triangular ligament, and then you kind of go, aha. So that's a real case of, people can come in then with any kind of trauma above and below that. So it could be the left hip or left knee, foot, ankle. It could be left shoulder. It could be left side of the neck. Or it could be on the right side too. You just don't know the way the body's reorganised itself after that trauma.
But it's coming from potentially the impact that occurred to the torso area.
Yeah, well, the torso or the whole body, you know. And you just see it all the time. And you don't know, like, people's symptoms clear up sort of in onion layers too. So the body will never give you something that it's protecting really deeply straight away. It's got to trust too, and it's got to learn how to let go with this technique, which is very gentle and specific.
Yeah, that reminds me actually, and I kind of want to come back to an example of something that you've done with visceral so people can understand a big picture. But you said about onion layers and the body not letting go of something, maybe on, even if it's really a root of an issue, it won't give you access as a practitioner to it. And it's not something that's really scientifically...
Well, it is actually.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I'd love to hear about that because I wondered about this.
So there's a hierarchy of need. The body will, from Jean-Pierre Barral's work that he always talks about in advanced trauma techniques, the body will protect the most valuable organ. You know, so that's often the kidneys, the brain, of course, the heart, you know, and it has this hierarchical system, if you've been in a car accident, of what it will do to those things, or how it will restrain the ligaments and the fascia around those organs to protect them. So often when we see someone, the first thing that will need to be done is that left triangular ligament, because the liver is such a large organ. I think under velocity it goes up to something like, it might weigh up to 2 kilos just normally when we're standing upright, but under velocity it can go up to some ridiculous amount, like 100 or 200 kilos.
Wow.
So that, when you think about that swinging around in your body, of course your ligaments are going to have this response of tightening and holding so it doesn't slam into the spleen and rupture the spleen, and etc., etc. So the body then will say, well, okay, first of all, release this big diaphragm tension so we can free up the kidneys, because the kidneys sit under the liver, especially the right one up high under the back of the liver. And then, you know, as the process goes on, you might then next treatment get to the, you know, usually 2 or 3 weeks later, because the neurology has to catch up. And I'm explaining very complex things that I probably shouldn't be, because, you know, this is Jean-Pierre Barral's work and I'm not an expert at all. I'm a beginner. So if you need to know about this, go and look online. But basically the kidney will be the next thing, because the body guards the kidney really well, and won't... There's a very sort of small amount of blood supply and urine via the vas deferens, or I've forgotten the name of that little ureter, and if that gets slightly kinked, then the body's in a lot of trouble very quickly. So that's why it will protect the kidney more. So same with the heart. If the heart gets damaged, the body's in trouble very quickly. That's why the heart sits in the rib cage, you know, it's not in the abdomen. So with the kidneys, they sit sort of kind of back under the back ribs in this fatty pad, and they're really prone to getting little kinks in their supply chain. So that's why the next thing you do potentially is the kidneys. But the body will tell you, and as Jean-Pierre says, listen to the tissues. You never assume, and you never think mechanically or anatomically. You listen to the body. You go, where is the restriction? Oh, wow, it's not the liver or the kidney. I'm completely wrong. It is, you know, the left lower sigmoid colon, you know. It could be anything, so you just don't assume. But it still means the body has a hierarchy that it'll never not do what's safest for it.
Which an AI robot may or may not know about.
Exactly. Like, even if they've downloaded all of Jean-Pierre's lectures and they know everything, they'll probably still go, you know, who knows, they might go too anatomical and go, you know, I'll just move the kidney. Crack, broken.
And I think what I understood you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the liver is such a high priority because of its weight and also how much potential movement it can have within the abdominal cavity. The idea of liver-lash, I remember learning about that, never considering how a liver can get thrown around inside the body. We just don't think about it.
No, you don't. I mean, even the esophagus, sorry, just as a side thing, it weighs, I forget what it weighs. It's like not much. But I know what it weighs under velocity, up to, I think, 80 kilograms.
What?
Yeah. I have to look over my trauma notes again, but it's phenomenal, you know. So you think about the car going 100 kilometres an hour and then stopping suddenly, the velocity of that. So, yeah, our little ligaments and our fascia do a lot more than we think, and that's why we have it everywhere. It holds us together. So really, back to the liver, why we prioritise it is it's just the biggest organ, and it's a very bloody organ. It deals with, I think, 2 litres a minute of our blood, and it can be used as quite a good handle to release bigger things, and especially those diaphragm ligaments, and then, you know, hence blood flow down the chain and give a bit more space in the abdomen.
Yeah. And if someone, just using the liver as an example, since it's such a maybe a common restriction people will have, both from maybe functional reasons but also structural reasons. So what might it look like if someone walks in to see you and they have something with their liver that needs to be addressed? What kind of symptoms might they have, or what might that look like in maybe a case that's real that you've worked with, or if anyone who's curious about, like, I'm worried about my liver. What might you notice in your body?
Yeah, please don't worry.
Don't worry.
People always think, oh my God, my liver, you know, she'll think I'm drinking too much. But, you know, the liver processes everything we eat, everything we breathe, our medications, our stress hormones or our endocrine hormones, you know, every single thing. So it can be kind of impacted by a lot of things, and especially things like viruses lately. Hence, post-COVID, this is my practice a lot lately, is working on the liver, because there's a lingering pathogen. So the liver's really smart. It compartmentalizes pathogens into sort of one little spot that you get a local listening to. It's often hotter than the rest of the body and the liver. And if people often don't know, because their body's in adaptation, so they don't know there's a problem, or they're feeling a bit tired, and they've come in because they're off, and then you find this kind of lingering pathogen spot on the infection zone of the liver, we call it. And so then we can help them with that. But they might go, oh yeah, I'm just a bit tired, or maybe, you know, I can't take a deep breath, because often there'll be restrictions in the breathing because of that congestion under the ribs, under the diaphragm. So that might be something too. It can be really subtle, or it can be hugely obvious to them, you know. But the body adapts, and that's why down the chain you'll get someone come in who's just bent over to pick up, you know, a child's toy, and suddenly they can't straighten up, and you can trace it right back to their left tranial ligament, but it might have happened a decade ago, but they've adapted around it. So they may not know.
What about right shoulder problems?
Definitely, and you know, that's a classic for perimenopausal women, because blood supply starts to change in the body, and metabolically the liver starts to slow down, and so, like, anatomically you've got the liver sitting on the right side under the right ribs, and you've got this kind of congestion there which the body's trying to accommodate. So it's trying to keep that area open and keep blood flowing into it, and that can then mean your body goes, well, you don't need your right shoulder as much as you need your liver, so we're just going to we're going to limit the rotation or the range of motion in that shoulder joint. So hence they get frozen shoulder. That can be part of the frozen shoulder pattern. Not all of it, but sometimes we see that.
Yeah, an often inconsidered component of shoulder problems is organs. And I think as well the stomach on the left-hand side under the left side of the ribs is linked to the left shoulder having issues.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's all these anomalies too, like, you know, just when you look at gallbladder connection to the phrenic nerve, which runs through the diaphragm, sometimes that'll show up on the left side and the gallbladder's on the right side. So, you know, it does change too. Yeah, and the liver being so heavy too, I was thinking about, so back when I used to do a bit of visceral work, and I've now forgotten everything, and I'm going to Brisbane soon to do the VM1 again, which I'm really excited about. But I remember the liver technique being so helpful for a lot of my clients at the time that I was practicing it. And I remember distinctly it was such I think a stereotypical pattern of someone with a structural liver profile, meaning that it looked like their body was side bent to the right and rotated to the right, and their spine was flexed forward as if they were just compressing their whole body onto their liver, and they couldn't move their right shoulder as well as their left shoulder. The mobility was really restricted. And for me, I think very structurally and very skeletally, and less about the functional workings of things as you do in your or Chinese medicine practice. You know a bit more about that than me. But I remember looking at them and thinking, oh man, I need to look at their liver and the involvement of that. And I don't know if there was anything in their history necessarily that would have pointed to, like, they have a problem with, what's the word? Detoxifying chemicals, or there was no impacts to that side of the body. But for some reason, whatever they had been through, they were just physically leaning over top of their liver and doing a liver lift technique and a few other things, and then adding in some movements to get them out of that position. It was really impactful, and I was really grateful that I knew about the impact of that organs and the connective tissue within the abdomen could have on our movement and our well-being. So I was really excited. Right. Yeah, you see those things where people can breathe again and twist again and move freely. And that's exactly right. And I think, like Jean-Pierre Barral, he just says some really basic but good things, and he repeats them over and over. And one thing is the body doesn't lie, or the tissues don't lie. The brain might forget, but the body doesn't. So it's just adapted beautifully to keep you alive and keep you walking upright. But you might be a bit bent over or twisted, or you might be, you know, restricted in some joints above and below that restriction, but you've adapted to it, and you just go, oh, you might have forgotten that you fell off a horse as a kid, or, you know, you don't necessarily even have to have landed on that side. I've seen people with trauma from landing on their coccyx, you know, that's a big one. We see quite a bit. And when you release the dura and the coccyx, and then you get back up the chain a bit, and you go, wow, now their liver can be released, you know, because they've forgotten, you know, or they might not have metabolic problems because the body's adapted so well. But it's the next thing that happens, and then the next thing that happens, and then one day they go, it's all fallen in a heap. Why am I, you know, why have I got severe arthritis, and why have I got gout in my right big toe, and why am I getting these headaches? All I did was that, you know. So
it is so interesting to think about the cyclic nature of these things, how something can originate from a structural accident when you're young, and that becomes something functional, an impairment of, you know, if the liver is a bit more compressed and not able to get blood flow, you can imagine how that would impact the function of it, which then impacts our ability to move, which then impacts further the ability of it to function. And then over 60 years, it becomes a real mysterious issue. So I just really love that holistic view that we get from considering all of the parts of a body and a being.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, you know, I always say to my patients, you should be thanking your body, because it's, kept going, and you've had these massive restrictions that you didn't, you felt them, but you didn't, you kind of just got on with it. And that's what your body's job is to do, is to keep you getting on with it.
Yeah, our bodies are incredible at adapting, which I guess again brings us back to that definition of health. We adapt until we can't, until the load becomes too great that there's only one decision to make, which might be just be stuck as you are. But there's always things we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. If you're stuck, just try and get some outside influence, you know, even if it's stretching or, you know, walking, or go and see a therapist who, you know, may have some clues.
Just to close on a really weird note, that reminded me of a client I used to have, won't name names, who was in his 70s, and he was really struggling with some health issues, and he just was kind of a lump, like didn't do anything. And it didn't take rocket science for him to feel better. It was literally, he just got on a bike and did some cardio a few times a week. And he said to me one session, Monica, I can't tell you how good I feel doing cardio. He's in his 70s, remember? He's like, my sex life has improved so much. Like, my blood flow is so much better. So it doesn't need to be a ground-breaking thing sometimes. Just, get a little extra blood flow.
I agree. We have to all use the simple things. Don't overcomplicate it. It's already complicated enough. Leave that job up to the therapists and just move it, use it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jen, so much for all of your insights and stimulating discussions. Appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you having me, and I hope I can ask you some questions.
Yes.
One day.
Another time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen.